Line 4, you are cordially invited to spend an evening with a true original, Quentin Crisp.
Good evening. My name is John Hurt, and a few years ago I had the great pleasure of having Quentin Crisp introduce a show that I did called The Naked Civil Servant, which was an autobiography of his own life. And this evening it is my incredible pleasure to be able to introduce him in his own show, An Evening with Quentin Crisp. When I first met Quentin, it was at art school, and I drew and painted him, though I was unaware of the fact at the time. And I was unaware that several years later, I would be requested to play him as an actor. He's always referred to the latter years of his life as the twilight of his life. And after the success of Naked Civil Servant, I suggested to him that he could not any longer call it the twilight of his life, but the sunset of his life. And tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce the Quentin Crisp.
Thank you, and good evening. I've been forbidden to describe this occasion as a straight talk from a bent speaker. So instead, we'll say it's like a consultation with a psychiatrist who is madder than you are. Because what I want to do is to cure you of your freedom. I'm convinced that it's an excess of freedom which has made everybody in the world so miserable. In England, I never have any difficulty persuading people that they're unhappy. The trouble comes when I tell them that they're free. Nobody seems to make any comparison between himself and somebody in the same circumstances in a time gone by. This amazes me. I come from a time when there was so little liberty that if a girl wanted to wear nail varnish, she had to leave home for good. And if a man wore suede shoes, moral obliquity written on every toe. 40 years ago, there would have been nothing for you to do but join the Foreign Legion. Now you all wear, do, say whatever you like. And in England, we enjoy the greatest freedom of all. We need never, never work. It's true, when we've used up the last possible grant for the last possible subject, we can go on to a thing called national assistance. Now, unlike others of my generation, I would be happy for all the people who find themselves in these blissful circumstances if I felt that they were happy. But wherever I look, people are not singing, they are shouting. They are not dancing, they are marching. They are not rejoicing, they are complaining. In fact, we can safely say that throughout the world, protest has become a game any number can play. One weekend in London, my landlady got into the wrong march. That'll show you what's going on there. So I must assume that what has made everybody in the world suddenly so angry is the element which has been added to their lives in recent times, their freedom. I know it's no good asking you to abide by laws handed down to you by your pastors and your masters and your elders and your betters. It's too late for that. So what I think we need is chains of our own making. Now, however heavy these may be, they will never feel as irksome as limitations placed on us by others. Not any old chains. What we need is a system, and the system begins with each of us trying to decide what it is that makes him the way he is. It involves a journey to the interior, not altogether a pleasant excursion, because as well as totting up what you consider to be your assets, you also have to take a long look at what your friends call the trouble with you. Nevertheless, the journey is still worth making. Indeed, we might say that the whole purpose of existence is to try to reconcile the glowing opinion we have of ourselves with the terrible things that other people say about us. And the synthesis of these two opposite opinions will be your identity. But that's not quite enough. It's like your fingerprints. These two are your very own, but if they are discovered, they may be used against you. Therefore, you have to polish up your raw identity until it becomes something glittering by which you are prepared, by which you are proud to be identified, and with which you can do barter with the outer world to get from it what you want. I won't say what you deserve, because if we all got what we deserved, we would starve. And this polishing up process will give you a set of rules of your own choosing, which will make your days so formal that compared with them, the life of a Trappist monk would seem like an orgy. Indeed, your style will become like a religion. You will be able to consult it in all moments of doubt. You will always be able to say in any situation, is what I am doing or saying or even wearing compatible with my chosen image of myself? I know I'm rattling on about problems which by world standards would be considered trivial. This I understand, but I do so because never a day goes by, well, never a month goes by without someone coming to me and saying, oh, you do have a nice life. Me? This would be a reasonable remark to make if I lived as all of you do, in mansions riddled with standard of living. But I don't. I live in one room which has never been cleaned in 35 years. And that brings me to my first message of hope. Never sweep the place where you live, because after the first 4 years, the dirt doesn't get any worse. It's just a question of not losing your nerve. I'm sure I'm right about this. The other day, a woman said to me, no wonder you're nice to everybody. You never do any housework. So now it would seem that all the women in the world are in a blind rage by 10:30 in the morning. Worn out, I shouldn't wonder, with all that sweeping, dusting, washing the dishes. Now, there's no need to do the dishes unless you find that you've passed the fish barrier. It works like this. When you're hungry and you look at your plate and it says bacon, you think, I could eat an egg. And the next day, when your plate says egg, you think, I could eat a fish. But when you've eaten the fish, you have to do the dishes. I'm only telling you these things so as to set you free from these boring domestic rituals. I want to give you a little time during each day when you stop thinking about other people and start thinking about yourself. When you give up looking outward and begin to look inward, so as to decide who you truly are and where you're really going. And now the next thing that my visitors say is, oh, you do know such wonderful people. And I do, but this also would only be a logical comment if my room was stuffed with people of wealth, substance, influence. And it isn't. It's crammed with the riffraff of London. And that brings me to my second message of hope. Never try to keep up with the Joneses. Drag them down to your level. It's cheaper. And then I'm asked, where do I meet these wonderful people? And I say, as a rule, in cafes. And in the days when layabout cafes were still open, those marvelous places where you could sit through lunch and tea and supper with one cup of coffee. I used to offer to take my friends to one, but they always uttered the words, of course, when we get there, you'll have to tell me what to say. I hope I'm painting for you a thoroughly depressing picture of someone who seems to be living like a kidnap victim, in unwanted and unnecessary isolation, only a few yards from where the traffic of the world is going by, with nothing more substantial boarding up the windows than self-doubt. The words, you'd have to tell me what to say, are a key. They show us that we are not dealing with a dreary old search for true love. The person who goes to cafes in the hope of making friends doesn't have to think what to say. He has to learn how to listen. We'd all like to have friends, but if it means you've got to listen, the price is ridiculous. So what does he want? As I see it, he longs for somewhere to go. And when he gets there, for somebody to be. But who? When modern man looks round in search of a destiny, nothing presents itself to him as it did when I was young, as being suited to his age, appropriate to his sex, befitting his station in life. Nowadays, whichever direction he looks in, his eyes run to the very limits of the horizon. He finds himself in a landscape without signposts, without milestones, without roads. The sheer vastness of the opportunities that lie before him may make him feel small. Now, if we are going to develop this lifestyle, we must banish forever all thoughts which are self-diminishing. We mustn't imagine when we make this journey to the interior that anything we discover is too trivial or even too distasteful to present to the world. The curiosity of the neighbors about you is a tribute to your individuality, and you should encourage it. Never try to defend yourselves. I'm appalled by the lust for evasion, which seems to be absolutely everywhere, even among actors, who presumably are a nation of exhibitionists. Yet even they say that they want to draw the line somewhere. The Burtons, Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, were so great that they brought style to marriage. And then they brought style to divorce. But even they expressed the fear that the press photographers of Rome would take pictures of them in the WC. Now, the way to deal with that problem, if you think it is one, is not to build a higher and higher wall round your villa, but to learn to urinate with style.